Okay, now on this point, I just wanted to go to another thing, which is probably the most, when I put on the community page, the most asked thing, which is there was a video that was released by one of our brothers some time ago, Brother Imran, and he released this big video about the leaks of some kind of email chat that you were involved in about preservation of Qur'an, okay? And since you were very candid on the points before with the madakhila and things, we want you to be very candid in terms of your position here. I mean, what is your position in relation to preservation of Quran? Is, for example, Hafs an Asim, the way Hafs an Asim, do you see it as preserved, munazzal from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or do you not see that as munazzal? What's your position?
Jayyid. Okay, so first and foremost, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna nahnu nazzal dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun. So we believe, as a matter of theology, as a matter of aqeedah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preserved the Quran, no question about it. Now, number of points. Let me answer this question in two parts. First of them, the story of what happened very briefly. Secondly, this issue. After the story of what happened, so there was a listserv, I'm pretty sure it no longer exists, where a certain brother started a listserv, or Google group, whatever you call it, for all Western graduates of Islamic universities across the world. So you had Deobandis, you had Salafis from Medina, you had from Riyadh, you had from Azhar. The condition was you had to be a graduate of a reputable, accepted program. So there was a small, I don't know, maybe 50 to 70 people. I'm not sure how many. I'm not the organizer, but I was one of those invited because obviously the conditions are fulfilled. And there's all different types of cutting-edge munaqashat between people of knowledge, as it happens. Okay, and one of the main conditions was everything is an amana, because this is not we're having internal. When you discuss with a peer or with a colleague, you're going to be back and forth discussing whatnot. It's not publishable material. And so this issue came up. We had a lot of discussions of Aqidah and Najdi Da'wah, and I presented my views there. We had other discussions. And the issue of, Qiraat and Qur'an and Ahruf came up. And, alhamdulillah, we had a very interesting discussion where all different views were given back and forth. There's at least 160, 70 emails between maybe 30 brothers back and forth. And, there were people that were on the right of me. There were people on the left of me. But again, Allah has tested me because I'm Yasir Qadhi. All those other emails were ignored. And it's, my bits and pieces. So one of the brothers, he did something, again, unethical. He was expelled from the list, and the list was basically banned because of that, stopped because of that. He couldn't refute to my argument. So he sent it to one of your madkhalis in England. And so then, of course, this madkhali gave it to the other one. And so obviously, everything, all whatever broke loose. But again, this was not something I brought up in public. And I would never bring it up in public. And I don't think it is wise to bring it up in public. We were having an amana-based discussion. By the way,
just one thing, I think the person who brought it up was not a madkhali per se. He's just to be clear. Like he's more on the right in terms of, but he's not, for all intents and purposes, not like a card carrying.
When I say madkhali, I mean the neo-madkhali strand. I mean the new. I view this person as the same strand of fronting for mistakes and faults, and he should do something better with his life. Anyway, I don't know the brother, and it doesn't really bother me. But my point is that what happened was unethical. Were you having dialogue, discussion? And by the way, even in their series of emails, I said, I'm still developing my ideas. We're having a discussion to go back and forth. That's what you do when you're having a munaqashat ilmiya. Now, for this brother to then spread it and make it, that was something that he has to answer for on the Day of Judgment. And if it was done out of ill intention, I shall not forgive. Anything done out of ill intention against me, unless they apologize to me, my suing is going to be in the court of Allah. And this is, by the way, a blanket statement. Everybody who is refuting other people, I speak for myself. If you have in your heart ghil and hasad and hiqt, and you don't apologize to me, in that case, my hisab is in front of Allah Azza wa Jalla, and I will get your hasanat, so do what you will. Anybody who's sincere, inshallah, no problem. You are forgiven. And anybody who comes to me, is automatically forgiven, because that shows that is remorse. Anyway, my point being that this brother did something haram. He's going to be asked about, because that is not something that should have been done, to leak a private email amongst fellow students of knowledge. Okay, so that is why I never got involved in deeply defending it, because it was unethical in the first place. Breach of aman. Now, as for the issue itself, every single student of knowledge knows, who studies Ulum al-Quran, that the most difficult topics are Ahruf and Qiraat. and the concept of Ahruf and the reality of Ahruf and the relationship of the Uthmanic Mus'haf with the Ahruf and the preservation of the Ahruf. Is it 1? Is it 3? Is it 7? And the relationship of the Qiraat to the Ahruf. This is a topic that when you're the beginning student of knowledge, you're like, what is all of this going on here? When you go a little bit more, you learn to simply memorize what your teachers say and regurgitate it out. And you don't fully comprehend. When you do a deep dive is when things get very, very awkward and difficult. And this isn't new. This is from the time of the Sahaba. In the Sahih or the Hasan Hadith of Ubay bin Ka'b, the Hadith of the Ahruf, that when the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the issue of Ahruf and that there are different Ahruf and whatnot, this is in the version of Muslim Imam Ahmad. Ubay bin Ka'b says, authentic Hadith, فَدَخَلَ فِي نَفْسِي شَكٍّ. In my heart, a doubt came that I hadn't had about Islam since the days of Jahiliyyah. This is not a joke, brothers and sisters. The issue of Ahruf and Qiraat caused confusion to somebody whom the Prophet ﷺ said, if you want to listen to the Quran directly, listen to Ubay. Ubay is not some even average Sahabi. He is the Qari of the Quran. He is the master. He is who he is. And he goes, فَدَخَلْ فِي نَفْسِي شَكٍّ. Like, what is all of this stuff? And the Prophet put his hand, and then he goes, it all went away. Ya akhi, me and you, we don't have that blessing, do we? Me and you don't have that blessing. Now, again, this is you're asking some very honest questions. It's the first time I'm saying these things. Many people are aware who listen to my lectures that I've mentioned the crises that happened to me at Yale, my first year at Yale. It wasn't a crisis of faith, by the way. So I was very clear about this. People misinterpret it. It was a crisis of my understanding of knowledge. It was a crisis of what my teachers taught me. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, as somebody who memorized the Quran as a teenager, alhamdulillah, in my entire life, I have never doubted that the Quran is divine. You cannot doubt that. And you listen to it, you recite it, you just cannot doubt that. It's never been an issue. Now, for the first time, I'm telling you here, what was the crisis? I mentioned it, referenced it, but I never explicitly said it. Why didn't I say it? Because it should not be said in public. But unfortunately, these brothers, because they released the emails, so then I have to then get it. This was the issue. That the issue of Ahruf and preservation and Qiraat and relationships between them, these are very, very difficult issues. And the most advanced of our scholars, they're not quite fully certain how to solve all of the unanswered questions in there. Ibn al-Jazari, who without a doubt is the greatest scholar of Qiraat for the last 1,000 years. Ibn al-Jazari famously writes, I have been thinking and pondering, I've been thinking and pondering about the issue of the Ahruf and Qiraat for over 35 years. Nayfan wa 30 sana, he said, right? And confused and whatnot, then finally, this is my response. And by the way, even that 7, all later scholars say, well, that doesn't make any sense. So they kind of dismissed even that. After 35 years, the greatest scholar of Qiraat.
Some accepted it. Some accepted it.
It doesn't answer the question. Anyway, I don't want to get into that issue.
Okay, fine.
Why do I not want to get to that issue? Here's the point. These issues should only be discussed amongst people who know what the Qiraat are and who understand some of these questions that are being raised.
So is what you're saying the shak that came, or not the shak, but the crisis that you had was in relation to this question of the relationship between the Ahruf and the Qiraat, basically?
No. The crisis I had wasn't that. The crisis I had was, that was what generated. But what was the crisis? The crisis was very simple. And by the way, this is now a well-known open secret amongst many Muslim graduate students and academics around the world. And this is well-known. Traditional understandings of Ahruf and Qiraat cannot answer some of these pressing questions that are now being poked by our people outside of, by our academics, by their academics outside of the faith tradition. You see, in a Muslim environment, there's always some respect that we have for the Quran. We should. In a Muslim environment, we'll press a little bit and then we'll say, okay, khalas, sami'na wa ata'na. And that's great, alhamdulillah. When you go to academia, they don't have that red line. And they're going to just, the famous story of the emperor with no clothes. They're going to just point out, no, that doesn't make any sense. Well, that's not true, and this and that. And they'll bring issues, which I'm not going to mention explicitly, that you know are true because they're in your own books. They're not inventing anything new. They'll bring you riwayat, and they'll bring you athar, and then you add to that very well-known issues of, I don't even want to be explicit. And then you bring on top of that makhtutat, and then. And it's very clear to you and to every single very advanced student and specialist that the standard narrative has holes in it. That's what I'm going to say. the standard narrative does not answer some very pressing questions. Okay, this is what I'm going to say. And
but I think here we
wait, let me finish this, Muhammad, because this is a very important point. I'll let you let me finish this. And by the way, if you are following online media and articles and whatnot, this is no longer hidden news. More and more professors and academics are writing stuff, and it's being publicized on Twitter in the last 2-3 years. I have had at least, I'd say, 12 people tweet at me like specific articles, like how do you answer this, and about ulum al-Quran, about Qiraat, about makhtutat, about issues. These are now well known within the Western Academy, that they're bringing forth issues. Their level of now knowledge is leaps and bounds above what it used to be 100 years ago. And by and large, our ulama in the Eastern world are not aware, by and large, of what's going on in the Western side of things. And they're not answering those questions in a manner that it needs to be answered. And this is something all of us that are in academia fully acknowledge. We actually have a list, by the way. I am involved with a group of people, 15 of them, which is especially all of us are Muslims, Hufad al-Quran, Qiraat experts, and academic-minded as well. Not everybody's Qiraat expert, but all of us are basically practicing living Muslims. We have a group that is discussing amongst itself these issues. And alhamdulillah, one of them, I'll just mention this, that the Yaqeen paper on Qiraat is one of our group members as well. And you can log on to Yaqeen and he has a paper on Qiraat and whatnot. And that's one interpretation that does a great service, but it doesn't answer all the questions. My point being that this issue of Ahruf and Qiraat has troubled the Ummah from the very beginning of times, nothing new. And there are 15 opinions about this. None of them fully answer all of the questions that are raised. Some of them answer more than others. So the issues of the relationship, of the origins, of the ikhtilaf and all of this should only be discussed amongst those who are familiar with this science. And if you want to, and I'll be very, again, open-minded here, I did a class last semester with the Islamic Center in America on ulum al-Quran. And in that class, we took students and we introduced them. This is what ulama say, this is what Suyuti said, this is what Fulan said. And then we introduced them to the other side, and then we developed. It takes a while. I can't answer this question in a 20-minute interview, nor is it wise to do so, which is why I never brought this topic up myself. You will not find one lecture of mine about this issue. It should never be brought up in public. And I don't like these idiots, and they are idiots, wallahi, because they're the ones who caused this. In this issue, they're utter idiots who did something haram. And I don't like saying this. This is not something you discuss amongst the masses, ya akhi. It's not wise. You don't understand Qiraat, let it be. It's wise. That's why I never did it. And that's why even when they accused me, I didn't defend myself, because I would rather people have doubt about me than the Quran. Let them throw me off the manhaj, no problem. Believe in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what is happening in the last few years is not me anymore. It's the Western academics. These problems are now becoming mainstream. Twitter has so many accounts of Quran experts, and they're non-Muslims, and they're just saying things. There are books written. Brill released a book by Shadi Nasser. Again, read that book as well. So for those that are interested in stuff, and you'll understand that, hey, we need ulama who believe in the Quran to defend the Quran. Alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah, ubashirukum, that our group
Let me ask you one question to try and make this as specific as possible. I think if I were to give you a blank mushaf, and tell you to write what is munazzal verbatim from Allah into that mushaf with no human interference, would you write something which corresponds?
It's not an easy answer. It's not an easy yes or no. It is enough for the Muslim to believe that the
I think
Quran
this should be an easy yes or no, though. Yasir Qadhi. I have to.
Okay, very, very well. So, Muhammad, after we get off this phone call, me and you, let's have a number of discussions. No problem. I'm very open with advanced students. But these issues should not... Look, it is Kalamullah, what is going to be written. It is Kalamullah. It is
what would you write?
You're pushing me. And I'm saying it's not hikmah to... Listen, I have a condition. Like I said, everything I say is going to be factual. If I wanted to do tawdiyah and whatnot, I would do it right now in front of you. There is no need for tawdiyah. The Quran is the uncreated speech of Allah. The Quran is preserved. The Quran is known. The Quran is mutawatir. And alhamdulillah, all of the qira'at are the Quran. All of the qira'at are authentic. Alhamdulillah. Leave it at that, ya akhi. Beyond this, honestly, I have no problem. We'll have discussions or take my class. But beyond this requires background information. It is enough for the Muslim to know that the Quran is the speech of Allah that has been protected, and what we recite is the kalam of Allah. That is enough for the Muslim to know.
I appreciate what you're saying, but look, the reason why I don't want to kind of leave it too vague here is because I feel like if there are vagaries in what we say here, then it's going to bolster the initial, whether it's said privately or not, it is going to give credence to that.
So let me say one thing, Muhammad, is that over the last, I've been discussing this issue, talking about my Ulum al-Quran book that I wrote, was published when I was 21. So it's been 25 years, 26 years that I have been thinking about the Ahruf and Qiraat, right? And that book represents the standard mainstream of Islamic thought. And it's a very advanced book that is the standard positions out there. Now, over the last 25 years, especially over the last 10 years, I have been doing a deep dive into this issue, going back to the original sources, consulting experts. And I have a workable theory. Inshallah ta'ala, when the time is right, I will publish books and papers on this. In the meantime, what have I done? Let me finish this point here. Let me finish this point. It's very important before I lose my train of thought. What have I done? I have approached around a dozen ulama that I look up to. And I'll mention some of the names, but you ascribe this to me. Sheikh Akram Nadwi, Sheikh Abdullah Yusuf al-Judea in England, Sheikh, subhanAllah, the Qiraat expert in Medina. Actually, when I went to Medina, I made a point to contact him, and we had a one-on-one discussion. And I've presented the findings of our group. It's not just me, like 15 of us are thinking about these issues. We understand some of these modern problems and whatnot. And I presented the khulasa to all of these people who are world top-notch experts. Some of them, I'm not going to mention names right now because I don't know if they want me to, fully agreed. Some of them said, these are really interesting ideas. I need time to think about them. And in the meantime, I want you to present it to me in written form. Okay? One of them,
but then if I could push back here just a little bit, I know this is, I don't want to make it uncomfortable, but it's just to make things clearer. Like, as you know, I spend a lot of time with Sheikh Akram, and we had these conversations about the Qiraat, like for many years. I would say many years I've had these conversations with him. His view is that, okay, the Qiraat are not mutawatir. He made that public. It's not something which is on his YouTube page. I think that's fine. For many years, many people have said that. Even though I vehemently disagree with the idea that the Qur'an, the things are not mutawatir, but many people for many years, if you look at the early tarjihat of, I don't know, Tabari or whatever, it's clear that the question of tawatur was not always a straightforward one. With all 10 qira'at that are like the Ashr. But what I was going to kind of push, because this question here, I think if it's left unanswered, a lot of people will have doubts in your position. That if someone gave you a Qur'an which is empty in terms of there's nothing on it, and gave you a pen, obviously you have the Qur'an with the qira'at. Obviously you can do isti'ana with what's maktub. But the question is, would what you write in that mushaf correspond with any? I'm not saying it's a mutawatir. I'm saying would it be sahih, authentic? Would it correspond with anything that we have in terms of the riwayat and the qira'at? If the answer is no, then for all intents and purposes, what you could be portrayed as saying is that you have a view which is not only completely anti-normative, but is beyond the scope of what was written for 1,400 years. So someone will say
if it's beyond the scope, no, who's going to bring a new Quran? A'udhu billah. We're going to have the Quran there, but which qira'ah will it be in? It'll be probably a mixture, right? It's not going to be necessarily. Fine. Yeah, okay. So let's leave it at that. Then. It's not going to be the exact Hafs and Asim bi riwayati fulan or Shu'ba. This is something that is coming at a later stage. Okay. The codification of the qira'at is coming in the 2nd, 3rd century of the Hijab.
But you would have something which you could say is sahih.
Fully recognizable by the average Muslim, obviously. Ya akhi, a'udhu billah, we're not presenting something that's
No, I'm sorry to push on it, but the reason why is because I know how politics will take your kalam.
Okay. So, of course it will be fully recognizable. Obviously, akhi, so yes, if that's what you're asking, then a'udhu billah. Okay, so you got my mind thinking at a much more advanced level. No. Obviously, if we were to present empty
mushaf.
You could, so the issue comes there's a problem. The problem is very simple. Are you certain that that's the way that it was in early Medina? because just like the codification occurred. But what you would have, let me put it this way, would definitely be something the average Muslim recognizes and understands and will not.
And all of it is verbatim from Allah.
This is in the hadith, ya akhi. It's exactly هكذا أنزل. It's literally what the Prophet said. هكذا أنزل. It's literally what he said. And again, this is, I encourage anybody who is really interested to go deep to take the class. I do this class. It'll be 1 year later. I had 100 students, by the way. Alhamdulillah, none of them, I was worried one of them might problematize. But because, you see, when you take a group of students and you develop with them, right? It's not a 10-second clip that they're just going to have su'al dhan. I had 100 students take that Ulum al-Quran class, and I went over every one of these issues with time and with reading and by developing their minds, no problem. Some of them were not experts in Qiraat, no problem. We gave them the background information and we took it with them. But in this 20-minute interview, or half an hour interview, akhi, it is wiser to not do a deep dive. That's what I'm saying. But to answer your question, there is clear. No doubt. To answer your question, no doubt. The average Muslim would recognize this if he knows some Qiraat, because you're going to say, what is Maliki, Maliki? But if he understands Qiraat, what he's going to see is going to be something that is very, very, he knows that this is exactly what it is. He's not going to find anything bizarre or strange.
So when you write, so just to be clear, if you write down, it might not be a standard Hafs an Asim.
Exactly.
But what you write down will be, is recognizable, and you believe that everything within that is munazzal min Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
100% as Allah is my witness. 100%. That is the belief.
Yes. That's very clear. So your position in that case wouldn't be any different from the mutaqaddimin. Many of them.
Let's leave it at that. I don't want to confuse the people. Yes, the early mutaqaddimin understood this. That's my point, ya Muhammad. The earliest scholars of Qiraat fully understood this. But what happened was a switch in the 6th, 7th century, which kind of then ossified the tradition. As for the Anyway, let's not go there. So you're right. You're absolutely right. Let's leave it.
That's fine. So one last question now, just to end this kind of conversation. There's been a lot of discussions here and there, but for someone, we talked on a very advanced level, but let's just try and benefit the majority of people that will be listening to this and think what this guy's talking about. If someone wants to start now, kind of learning Islam and get involved, and maybe they haven't got a full command of the Arabic language, but they want to start with books, what would you advise in terms of where to go? Not only just books, but bodies of work, videos. Okay, you've mentioned your seerah, for example, so that's something people can maybe refer to. But is there anything in addition to that you would point them towards?
Yeah, so we have to understand this now. We are not talking about those interested in academic Islam study in Western institutions. That's a whole different track. We're talking about the average Muslim who wants to study the deen, to come closer to Allah, and to worship Allah in an appropriate manner. For this person, obviously, they need to stick with the mainstream sciences of Islam. You need to understand, you need to start doing your basics of tajweed. This is a very simple science. You need to start the basics of fiqh. I advise every Muslim who's interested to find a teacher and to do fiqh one-on-one. Whatever madhab you choose is fine. Just do any fiqh so that you understand how to worship Allah, how to pay zakah, what to be done. So I wouldn't advise online fiqh. Fiqh should be done one-on-one as much as possible, okay? Because you can misunderstand something, be problematic. As well, of course, you said the seerah, and I also have the lessons of the Quran, the summary of the Quran as well, the 30 lessons I've done. It's also something useful. Inshallah, all of this mainstream mashayikh that you know, and Mufti Mike and all of them, and all of them, they have some benefit. Listen to them. It'll keep your mind preoccupied. Questions will come. But there must be one person in your community that you have access to, that you trust. Because you need that one-on-one. Because if you have a problem, an issue, you should be able to go to that person and then question that person. And other than that, there's no set curriculum. It's just the concepts. You need to do your basic theology, your basic fiqh, you start memorizing Qur'an, and overall be with people of ilm. It's not necessary to become an alim, but it is very essential to associate yourself with ilm and the people of ilm. It does have a very positive impact on you spiritually.
Jazakumullahu khairan, Dr. Yasir Qadhi. I think many people would have really, and you know what, we're first of all very grateful to have you on, but secondly, very grateful for your openness and honesty. And I feel like the thamarat that have come from this is going to be something of benefit for so many people.
I hope so, inshallah. And again, my final advice to these brothers, look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this religion very, very vast. From the very beginning, the Sahaba had multiple understandings and interpretations. It's not just about fiqh. Choose those whom you feel most comfortable with and then be quiet about the rest. Simple as that. Ya akhi, no one alim is going to be the end all and be all. No one person of knowledge is going to destroy Islam either. So love the one whom you love with a little bit of less passion, and hate the one that you hate with a little bit of less passion. And if you are attracted to a group of exactly, and if you are attracted to a certain group of ulama, yeah, if you're attracted to a certain group of ulama, stick with them. Alhamdulillah, as long as they're mainstream, ya akhi, all mainstream Sunni movements have khair in them. This is my position. All the very fact that there's large quantities of Sunni Muslims of all of these movements, inshallah, fihim khair. There's good in them. Whether you're Deobandi, whether you're Ikhwani, whether you're Salafi, whether you're moderate Sufi, Ghazali, Sufi, all of them, they have khair in them. Find your jama'ah that appeals to you, stick with them, and then be quiet about other Muslims, ya akhi. That's not the priority. There are people leaving Islam, there are murtads, there are people that are Islamophobes. Take that passion that you have and then bring somebody who's not even praying closer to Islam. Bring somebody who has doubts about Islam and bring him closer to Islam. And for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember, you have a legacy you want to leave. You will not build your legacy by destroying the legacy of others. You will end up destroying yourself and, generally speaking, not harming people that are building their legacies. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, most importantly, for ikhlas. Always make dua for ikhlas, because that's the most important thing. And then after ikhlas, we want the qabul, that Allah Azza wa Jal will accept from us. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our sins and to cover up our mistakes and to forgive, and not protect our sins, sorry, to cover up our sins, a'udhu billah, and to protect the good that we have done, and to also, cover all of us have faults, ya akhi. None of us is perfect, and Allah is the Sittir who covers our faults up. And ya Muhammad, I want to say Jazakallah khair. I really appreciate your probing questions. That's why I agreed to the interview with you, that I find you to be somebody who doesn't shy away from the tough questions, but at the same time is willing to listen. I appreciate that. And I ask anyone who has any issues, they are free to come to me one-on-one, and you will find me to be a very honest person. Like inshallah, you'll see this as well. And if you really want to do more than this, free plug here, attend or sign up for my classes at the Islamic Seminary of America, where I'm really going and doing deep dives in whatever class that I do. By the way, are you aware, next semester, I am teaching modern or advanced hadith with Jonathan Brown. We're going to be co-tagging, me and him both.
Well, I'm not aware of that.
So yeah, so you guys should, even if it's just an online attendee, just like you register for the class, it's going to be a very exciting class where, once again, the Islamic Seminary is cutting edge. We do the classical stuff. At the same time, we introduce you to what is going on in the mustashiqeen and shubuhat, and then we merge together and we defend the tradition. But how we defend it might not necessarily be the way it was defended 1,000 years ago. And that's something you have to be prepared for. But Jazakumullah khair, Muhammad. I hope that inshallah it is a benefit.
Anytime. Jazakumullah khairan for coming.
We'll do this again. I had a good time, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
I'm sure you did. Otherwise, if there was no probing questions and no different, then it would be too
too boring.
Yeah, it would be too boring.
Inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.